The sinking of the Lusitania. So one thing I'd like to say about the sinking Lusitania is a little bit of a conspiracy theory. Something interesting about the date here. The Lusitania's final voyage set sail on May 1st, which is the birthday of the Order of the Illuminati, which was founded by Adam Weishaupt on May 1st, 1776. 1776 is also a very important year to Americans, isn't it? I'm not going to say there's some correlation there, but there's some correlation there. Let's get into it. Oh, hold on a second. Let me pull my slides over here so I can make sure I'm clicking through them for you. Wonderful, wonderful. Wait, hold on. How am I going to organize this? Ugh. Got so many screens going. Okay. I got it now. Boom. Okay, here we go. Perfect. August 19th, the sinking of the Arabic brought into discussion J.P. Morgan financing the Allied powers. House of Morgan cabled to their London branch. We have a feeling that since sinking steamship, Arabic conditions have improved slightly towards favoring unsecured loans. So we're talking about the possibility of money influencing this thing. January 10th, 1936, Senatorial munitions investigations hearing. Senator Clark asked J.P. Morgan how the Arabic incident may have improved the possibilities of a loan to the Allies. Morgan replied in relation to the loss of American lives that it increased the already strong popular sympathy with the Allies. Alex Rutherford in the book, write this down, in the book Willful Murder, The Sinking of the Lusitania writes, in the first year of the war, Morgan's purchased war material was worth, $1.1 billion, assisted by British Treasury staff and naval and military ordnance officers dressed as civilians and attached to the British consulate in New York. After inspection, the purchased goods were passed to the British Admiralty's forwarding agents G.K. Sheldon amid strict security to prevent enemy agents discovering the name of the shippers and manufacturers. We'll come back to J.P. Morgan and the other banker interests in this situation later. The Cunard, this is the shipping line company that controlled the Lusitania, alerted their captains of the question of enemy aliens working in connection with loading and discharging cargo or bunkers on board British ships. So Thomas Carbone said, tuition, I bought the book, but listening to you go through it is way better. Thanks, Professor Hotep. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's great to have the book right there with you because I don't cover everything in this. Especially this chapter. There's a lot in this chapter I'm not going to discuss. I'll just go over the main points. Thank you for the purchase. So, really, there's a couple of conspiracies here. One of them is in regards to the explosion on board the Lusitania because it was supposed to be built in such a way that it definitely shouldn't have sunk as fast as it did if it was in fact going to sink. So there's which is very similar to the story of the Titanic. Let's continue. So I'm going to bring on your screen right now. Give me a second. I want to pull this up. I want you to see this piece of evidence I have brought forth today. Oh, don't tell me I removed it from the tab. Give me a second. I'll pull it back up. New York Times. New York Times, May 1, 1915. Lusitania is the Google search here, and I'll pull it up on your screen. Here we go. Here's one of them. Copy image address. And I'll put this on your screen just now, and you'll see it. This is the warning that you'll see that appeared in the New York Times. May 1st, 1915, the German embassy in Washington warns Lusitania passengers. So this is a warning. And we're going to go through some of the conspiracies surrounding this warning. So that you'll see that here, New York Times, May 1st. Let's continue. There was a telegram written to Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt. You guys know the name Vanderbilt, according to journalist Jack Lawrence. Ironically, Vanderbilt canceled his trip on the Titanic, which sunk April 15th, 1912. But it says here the Lusitania is doomed. Do not sail on her. Signed, Mort. Mort means death or dead. I believe that's Francis or French. Okay, let's continue. So I wrote here, I said, if America needed a warning, nothing was more apparent than the fact that the American oil tanker SS Gulf Flight was sunk by a German U-boat in the same waters the Lusitania was headed into on the same day the Lusitania was set to depart, May 1st, 1915. Ambassador Bernstorff admitted that he did receive warning from Berlin 2 months prior to the sinking of Lusitania, but he kept it in his desk until Berlin ordered him to publish it. German writer and editor of the periodical The Fatherland, George Sylvester Viereck, claims the contrary. In his memoirs, he claims that the German propaganda cabinet drafted the warning and urged it on the ambassador, who had in turn consulted Berlin before approving it. April 15th, 1915, German propaganda cabinet meeting on American soil. Viereck warned, sooner or later, some big passenger boat with Americans on board will be sunk by a submarine. They will be held to pay. Next slide. We have an anonymous caller to British Ambassador Sir Cecil Spring-Rice on April 29th. Says above notice will appear in a local newspaper Saturday, May 1st, and in about 40 other papers the same day and 2 ensuing Saturdays. The information may have no value, but I'm sending it because I wish allies to win. No signature because it might cost me my job. Signed, patriotically, 1776. Right now we're going over some of the warnings, right? So that's another part of the conspiracy, that there were several warnings that people should not ride this boat. Senator La Follette's speech was published in St. Paul Pioneer Press on September 21st, 1917, which reads as follows. 4 days before the Lusitania sailed, President Wilson was warned before the Lusitania sailed that it carried 6 million rounds of ammunition. Secretary Bryan asked that passengers be warned not to sail upon it. May 7th, Edward House said to Sir Edward Grey in reference to the Lusitania potentially being sunk, if this were done, a flame of indignation would sweep across America, which would in itself probably carry us into war. I'm not going to read the rest of that exchange. If you get the book, you can read the rest of that exchange. It's going to rip through all this information really fast today. I don't want to spend too much time on this. According to a May 7th entry in Lansing's diary, it reads, W.K. Kavanaugh found that in elevator this morning, 9:30, he heard messenger of German embassy tell Miss Cleves that this was the day the Lusitania would be blown up, which is in Robert Lansing. Robert Lansing was counselor to the executive branch. This is a May 7th entry in his diary. You know the story of Robert Lansing and how he wanted to push us to go to war, if you were here for the previous presentation. So we're going to examine, did Americans go to war? That's part of the question here. As we know, Frank Munsey partly financed the Roosevelt election run. It says here, Frank Munsey wanted the U.S. to enter the war. His exchange with one of his managing editors, J. Edwin Murphy of the Washington Times, goes, and then has an exchange here. But the exchange ends. It says, my God, send out and get him right away. Tell him to declare war against Germany at once. Munsey then pens an editorial which criticizes President Wilson, and I will read that. It says, when all this was happening, accounts that wring the soul of all humanity, save that of German blood, the president went off to the country for a day at golf. Great God, has there been such a spectacle as this since Nero fiddled at the burning of Rome? So this is Munsey sitting down at his desk using his media power to create some coercion for war. We're going to continue now. We're going to continue. This is the British Board of Trade Inquiry, or British Rec Commissioner's Inquiry. And it says only the government and Cunard lawyers would attend the 2 closed sessions, which discussed the classified information, but passengers, crewmen, unions, and Canadian government were all represented in open sessions to which the public was admitted. So the passengers, the crewmen, etc., were in open court. But as far as that classified information in regards to this inquiry, the Cunard lawyers and the government, that was closed off. 2 closed sessions. Going to move on here to the propaganda agencies of the Entente powers made full use of the occasion. The Times of London announced that 4/5, now this is media propaganda. We're going to go through 3 points of media propaganda here in regards to the war. And it says the Times of London announced that 4/5 of her passengers were citizens of the United States. The actual proportion was 15.6%. OK, so this is people trying to purport that the Lusitania was 4/5, which is about what is that, 80%? But it was really 15% were actually U.S. citizens. The next point here says the British manufactured and distributed a medal which they pretended had been awarded to the submarine crew by the German government. This is in Carol Quigley's document or volume called Tragedy and Hope. So they created a fake medal and pretended that this was given to a submarine crew of the German government. Then a French paper published a picture of the crowds in Berlin at the outbreak of war in 1914, but published it as Germans rejoicing in the news of the sinking Lusitania. So this is just pure fake news. And fake news in order to convince the public to support the United States entering the war. Next, we have a report to the Secretary of Treasury on June 4th, 1915. Mr. Malone, the collector of customs at the Port of New York, and he said it is entirely impractical to make a physical examination of each package or case going into the cargo of an outgoing ship. So this is in regards to were there explosives on the boat. Okay, this is one of the big controversies surrounding Lusitania. Was it there? Was it not? But we have here that the collector of customs, Mr. Malone, specifically states it's impossible to check everything, so nobody can exactly say there was or were not explosives on board. Now we have E.E. Chadwick note to Henry White on May 23rd, 1915. He said, I do not think the Lusitania was one of the 2 specially subsidized naval reserve ships. Should have been allowed. I'm going to read that again. I do not think the Lusitania, which was one of the 2 specially subsidized naval reserve ships. Now, keep in mind this. He refers to the Lusitania as a naval reserve ships. And this is another part of the conspiracy where people try to purport that this was solely a merchant ship and therefore it should not have been attacked. But you can see here, E.E. Chadwick refers to it as a naval reserve ship. He continues, he says, should have been allowed to use our ports. She was loaded too with 5,700 cases of ammunition. General Leonard Wood phrased it to me at Mohonk, you can't cover 10,000 tons of ammunition with a petticoat. Thus, while with every sympathy for those who lost their lives, the loss was due to their own unpatriotic wisdom and to the outrage of the British carrying such cargo in a mail steamer. War is war, and can an enemy belligerent at any cost allow the safe transport of material for its own destruction? ? I do not see how we can demand that under any circumstances that the lives of our citizens can be guaranteed in such ships. Let's continue. Next slide. So naval experts in Washington on May 8th said inside Explosions following the attack might have aided in the work of destruction, as the ship is understood to have carried a vast quantity of war materials for the Allies, including much ammunition. Now, when I thought about these secondary explosions, I'd like to chat, like the people in the comment box, to please tell me, what event in American history do you remember that there were secondary explosions? What travesty happened where they purported that there were secondary explosions? Can anybody tell me what that event was? I'll continue while you guys deliberate in the chat. Thank you for everybody watching and viewing this educational material today. Let's continue. So surrounding the conspiracy of the second explosion, we have Quartermaster of the Lusitania, Hugh Johnston, at the British Board of Inquiry. He states, I was asked in Liverpool, getting ready to go to London, how many torpedoes struck the ship. I said 1. Well, I was told 2 would help the case. I said there was only 1. We have a survivor of the sinking of Lusitania by the name of Oliver Bernard, who claims to have been ignored by the British Board of Trade Inquiry. And he wrote to the grieving mother of a Dick Pritchard. He says, I have been prepared and I'm still ready to declare under oath that we were struck by only 1 torpedo abaft the bridge. Okay. We have the captain of the Lusitania, William Thomas Turner, who if you go, I don't dive into this in the book, but if you look at it, they like try to blame this all on him and say it was the captain's fault, right? It says here the captain of Lusitania, William Thomas Turner, testified to the county coroner, John J. Horgan, 3 days after the sinking at the Kinsale inquest in Ireland that the ship was only hit by 1 torpedo. And then there was a second explosion. However, during the British Board of Trade inquiry, he stated that there had been 2 torpedoes, not 1, and that the first had struck between the 3rd and 4th funnels. So I got to ask you, why the change in story from the captain? Anyway, we'll continue. If you guys know anything about intelligence, they had during this World War I, they had a room called Room 40 where they were intercepting radio signals and messages, etc., from the Germans and decoding that. They were also using this to send misinformation or disinformation, which would confuse the German forces. Anyway, there's as part of this conspiracy, there's this thing called talking about von Rettig. There's a von Rettig, and he's basically saying that there was 600 tons of gun cotton, which he purchased from the DuPont Powder Company. And they were supposed to send this on one of the fastest steamers in the next day or 2. Now, I don't know. We can't say for sure if all 6 tons of gun cotton was on this boat. But there is some record of this gentleman who is a Austro. This is an account April 26, 1915, between Captain Guy Gaunt, an Austro-Hungarian chemist from Cleveland named Dr. Ritter von Rettig, for the people that want to do their research. Rettig informed him that this chemical is called pyroxylin, would explode if it came in contact with seawater. In an affidavit, Rettig claimed to have evidence that about 600 tons was shipped to New York in late April for loading onto the Lusitania. So this is his account. So again, going back to conspiracy theory or whatever it's called, people purported that this was just a regular merchant ship doing commerce, and it was not, in fact, an armed merchantman. But in the Naval Annual, a silhouette was printed out in the 1914 edition of Jane's Fighting Ships. It says here in the British technical periodical called Engineering that there were emplacements for 12 6-inch quick firing guns. And that's according to the plans on the Lusitania, the building of the Lusitania. Okay. So when we say the Germans shouldn't have attacked it, they should have known it was a merchant boat. You can't say that because this is obviously some sort of military ship. According to Carol Quigley, this is also from Tragedy and Hope. It says Lusitania was a British merchant vessel constructed with government funds as an auxiliary cruiser, expressly included in the naval list published by the British Admiralty, with bases laid for mounting guns of 6-inch caliber, carrying a cargo of 2,400 cases of rifle cartridges and 1,250 cases of shrapnel, and with orders to attack German submarines whenever possible. This is according to Carol Quigley in his volume Tragedy and Hope. We have a statement here from a professor, Samuel F. Bemis, and here's what he says. He says, one might well wonder whether the British government purposely exposed to attack the Lusitania and other British passenger vessels carrying American citizens in order to lead the Germans onto a rash act which might bring the United States into the war. This same exposure, possibly deliberate, was true in the case of the unarmed cross-channel passenger boat Sussex. It was lumbering along without escort through a sea littered with wreckage of recently torpedoed vessels. The truth probably will never be known whether the British and French governments deliberately exposed these ships for high diplomatic stakes. Let's continue. According to Rutherford, he says here, Room 40 did not relay any messages to the naval bases in Liverpool or Queenstown when they discovered the departure of the U-20, the submarine which sunk the Lusitania. However, they did enact measures to protect other naval vessels, which were set to set sail in the waters at danger. These ships were held in port, given destroyer escort, or diverted to safer routes. So, the way it goes is basically saying that Room 40 had messages that U-20 had departed and was heading out into the waters, and they protected their military vessels and left the Lusitania out to dry. There's a Captain Reginald Hall, talks about the Room 40 decodes, and he says that the Lusitania was a German target and that this was a German target and the subject of keen espionage activity in New York. He also knew that a submarine pack had been sent out in response to his own misinformation to look for large troop transports off Liverpool, the Lusitania's home port. Now we're going to get into a little bit of J.P. Morgan, and I'll read here what Carol Quigley has written about J.P. Morgan. He says, one influence which worked to create and strengthen the Triple Entente was that of the international banking fraternity. These were largely excluded from the German economic development, but had growing links with France and Russia. Prosperous enterprises like the Suez Canal Company, the Rothschild Copper Enterprise, Rio Tinto in Spain, and many newer joint activities in Morocco created numerous unobtrusive links which both preceded and strengthened the Triple Entente. The Rothschilds, close friends of Edwards VII and of France, were linked to French investment bank Banque de Paris et de Pays-Bas. I don't know how to speak French, so please bear with me. He continues, he says, each country suspended the gold standard at the outbreak of the war. This removed the automatic limitation on the supply of paper money. Then each country proceeded to pay for the war by borrowing from banks. We talked about debt before, so there should be supplementary information for your knowledge base. The banks created the money, which they lent by merely giving the government a deposit of any size against which the government could draw checks. The banks were no longer limited in the amount of credit they could create because they no longer had to pay out gold for checks on demand. Now we're going to go into Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. He referred to the J.P. Morgan Company as, pay attention, the acknowledged leaders of the Allied forces. Did you hear what I said? Oh my God. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said he referred to J.P. Morgan and Company as the leaders of the Allied forces. Wow. He continues and he says, a little factoid. They held 72 directorships in 47 of the largest American companies. And he says here, its members and the directors of its controlled trust companies, the First National Bank and the National City Bank, held 341 directorships in 112 corporations with resources or capitalizations of $22.25 billion, including banks, trusts, insurance companies, transportation systems, and public utilities. Next slide. The French firm of Rothschild Freres, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, cabled to Morgan and Company on August 3rd, 1914, looking to float a loan of $100 million for the French to purchase American goods. I'm going to skip some of this. August 10th, 1914, letter to President Wilson. Secretary Bryan, I'm not going to read the letter. You can read it on your own. It's in the book, The Patriot Report. Secretary Treasurer, Secretary Bryan, William Jennings Bryan dissented. He said, no loans. Don't do that. He definitely saw the danger. Here's a note here. August 15th, Secretary Bryan sent the following telegram to Morgan and Company, to which they relented. And he said, there is no reason why loans should not be made to the governments of neutral nations. But in the judgment of this government, loans by American bankers to any foreign nation which is at war are inconsistent with the true spirit of neutrality. This is our hero, William Jennings Bryan. But, you might ask, well, how did they end up financing this thing? So basically what they said was, all right, they sent in one of their associates, one of their representatives, the bankers did, to speak with William Jennings Bryan. And because they get to make up the monetary system, they get to make up an entire new vocabulary. So basically they just barraged them with a bunch of technical terms. And then basically said, okay, we're not going to loan money to these countries. We're going to invest in them. And this is how they created the loophole. And you're about to see in a second how the Federal Reserve was involved in this. Also, what should be alarming is that a meeting occurred between Lansing and the Morgan agent. His name is Willard Straight, at the Metropolitan Club in Washington on October 24th. So we have here a counselor to Robert Lansing, a counselor to the executive branch, meeting with a J.P. Morgan agent, Willard Straight. And Tansel, as you know, that author, America Goes to War, he notes that it was certainly unusual for an acting Secretary of State to divulge confidential information to a mere acquaintance. Tansel comments, apparently Mr. Lansing was on terms of intimacy with certain agents of Wall Street, and his subsequent strong advocacy of large loans to belligerent nations is not surprising. Also, something you'd have to research in regards to the sinking of Lusitania is the Nye Committee, NYE. And it basically says, Morgan says in his testimony before the Nye Committee, we were using him, talking about Straight, at that time to get information for us where he could. He had relations in Washington at times that he could see people without making any public notice of it. So J.P. Morgan just up there snitching, like, you can't touch me, but I'm gonna snitch on all these fools. If I'm going down, if Nino Brown going down, everybody going down. So there was a March 31st, 1915 press release written by Secretary William Jennings Bryan, and basically, hands tied. He basically did not consent or dissent to this loophole. So as historian Tansel is going to explain how the loophole was exploited using none other than the Federal Reserve System. So it says, under the law creating the Federal Reserve System, it was expressly provided that the Federal Reserve banks should be permitted to buy only the warrants issued by states and municipalities of the United States. So a warrant is basically the right to purchase but not obligated to purchase stock in whatever entity, right? And he continues, and it says the financing of foreign governments was, and he says, advisedly eliminated from the act. Therefore, it was apparent that no bank could make its acceptance eligible for rediscount with a Federal Reserve Bank if the acceptance were made for the account of a foreign government. So basically, rediscount means like to discount, whatever agreement you have for a second time. That's what rediscount means. It's basically saying like, look, banks, y'all can't do nothing. If you want to do something, it's got to go through the Federal Reserve. OK. As far as doing business with one of these belligerent nations or foreign nations. He continues, he said, where there's a will, there's a way, and thus the way was found to use the Federal Reserve banks for the purpose of financing purchases for the Allied governments. So that might be a tidbit you didn't know about the Federal Reserve entity, I guess we should call it. I don't want to call it a bank. I guess we could call it a bank. I don't know. Next, we're going to dive into some information here in regards and a name that's going to be mentioned. And if you watch the previous presentations, especially the one on Jekyll Island and the Federal Reserve, you'll remember the dude Benjamin Strong. So here we have, hold on, let me put this. There we go. So here we have Davison. Sent to Morgan a cablegram which affirms the approval by the Federal Reserve Board. And it says Strong advises us that the Federal Reserve Board have now ruled so that, in his opinion, drafts drawn by London bankers or merchants accepted by New York banks or bankers, proceeds of which shall be used in payment for exported goods, may be received by Federal Reserve banks. OK, so it has to go through the Fed. Now, keep in mind, Benjamin Strong, also after his influence at Jekyll Island, became governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. OK, so there's a lot of power that one man had. We continue. March 29. March 29. Morgan and Company, National City Bank, and First National Bank of New York City made the exchange of French Republic 1-year Treasury bonds for $25.2 million. Again, Secretary Bryan warns the president of financial interests that could nudge us into war. More loans poured into the Allied nations on August 23rd, 1916. Subscription books for a loan of $250 million to the Allied governments were opened at the office of J.P. Morgan and Company in New York City. Another one here, the British government via Lloyd George and Lord Reading to Davison inquired about a loan of a whopping $30 million. I'm sorry, let me take that back. $300 million each month for 5 months. Now, all the sources are in my book, The Patriot Report. If you don't have a copy of it, I suggest getting yourself a copy of it. Patriot Report, Exposing the Conspiracy of Money and War, Unmasking the Conspiracy of Money and War. Fabulous document. All the research and all the sources are there. Then we have a Nomi Prince summarizes the financial interests of World War I here. And he says by July 13, 1917, there were 51 private banks providing Britain with another batch of loans totaling $234 million. Morgan led the pack with nearly $70 million. Other top lenders included Chase National Bank with $12.5 million, First National Bank with $45 million, Guaranteed Trust Bank with $20 million, and National City Bank with $30 million. Now, you can take what you want from this information. And he said recently, shout out to Merlin, he said recently they found Lusitania, and wouldn't you know, Germany was right. The medical ship was packed with arms. Oh, that's what they said recently? Oh, okay, there you go. Yes, Jabari, yes. He was one of the first Jabaris to sit on the Supreme Court. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very informed individual you are there, Jabari. When we come back in the next presentation, we're going to go over World War II, and we're going to show you how the same people who financed the Allied powers are now going to finance Germany. You know, yesterday, I did a presentation on terrorism threats, and they're saying, you know, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, etc., could contribute to domestic terrorism and lead to lack of trust in the government. Again, I wrote the Patriot Report because people have too much trust in the government. I'm not a terrorist, and I love the United States of America. I love living here. I love being, I love benefiting from this high quality of life. I do want better for our country. I'm not a domestic terrorist. Do not wish to attack anybody in Congress or any of the three branches of government. I just want better for them. I would like some honesty and some transparency. That's all we ask for. That's why I like Bitcoin. Okay. If anybody knows anything about me, you'll find me advocating for Bitcoin, and we actually make Bitcoin available to the public quite easily via our application called Coinbits. This company is growing very, very fast. We've been in business, I want to say, for at least 5 years now. Don't quote me on that. But your Bitcoin will be safe and secure here. And you can pull your Bitcoin off of this platform and into your own pockets. And I do like the transparency of Bitcoin. That's the end of today's presentation. I just wanted to whip through the information, make sure you got all the key talking points. Didn't want to make it too long, so you guys can go back and do your own research. There are some things trending. So as you know, at the end of my streams, I always go over the trending topics to see if there's anything interesting there to be discussed. So I'll do that right now, and you guys can get my opinion on what's happening in the world. Let's see. James Harden. So we talked about this on Men of Order. Uncle Hotep was on that episode. I'll show you. You guys can go view that. You can go view that episode right here. Where'd it go? It's somewhere here. I don't know. But they were just live. Maybe it hasn't saved or something like that. But they were just live a few moments ago. But if you want to know about that, it'll be there on that channel about the James Harden trade. Lakers, Men of Order. Men of Order covers all sports, so we'll just skip over all the sports. Apparently, the baby got into a fight. You know, I don't understand why that's top 10 trending news topics. I think people find that to be important to discuss. There are now 106,000 tweets. I don't know why people are so fascinated by the fact that somebody had a fight in a bowling alley and they feel the need to discuss this all day. But it is what it is. Okay, new Jurassic Park's coming out. I'm sure the kids will love that. Sports, that's Men of Order. Sports. CPAC, what's going on with CPAC? Let's see what's going on with CPAC. What? Enos Cantor. Yeah, we know Enos Cantor was confirmed for CPAC. I don't know, for some reason CPAC. Oh, the Rockets are waiving Enos Cantor, sources tell ESPN. Oh, somebody says here, pretty confident Enos will never play in the NBA again. Wow. So I guess people were trying to say that because he's speaking at CPAC, he's now canceled. You know, God forbid you talk to a bunch of Republicans, you can't exist in our sphere anymore. I don't know if that is the true reason, but that's what people are speculating. Something about Trump and Kim Jong-un. Blah, blah, blah. Probably nothing important. I'll hang out for 5 minutes, read some of you guys' chats. If you guys got questions, super chat or Ask them in a thing. If you super chat them, I'll definitely answer them. If you ask them in a regular chat, I might answer them. Thank you, Natasha Kayleen, for sharing the link to my book. No problem, Sean. Yes, lots of distractions. Yeah, it's a good reminder for people who are not aware. Hotep Nation stands for homeschooling. That is our mission. Homeschool America. Currently, you have 54 donations and $5,391 raised. So we appreciate all of our donors. If you have not donated, we invite you to please donate to our campaign so we can assist some people in the homeschooling arena. Putin ain't threatening nobody. I think that's fake news. Where y'all hear that at? What do I think about 2/22/22? Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up. Seems to be a very interesting combination of numbers. What does that add up to? What's that? 6 plus 6. Ooh. Okay, that could be the day something happens. I'm going to just go because 6 is a number that they love to use. So I'm going to go ahead and say be prepared for something to happen on or around that date. I'm definitely going to have my eyes peeled for that date. It's probably going to be a very interesting time. Let's see. Said, I am subscribed, support. However, I don't get notifications for your live. Can you advise? Did you turn on notifications? Because I think you have to turn those on. And sometimes YouTube has a discretion to not send out notifications, depending on if they deem the content suitable for the user. Shout out to Canon Hotep. Make sure you subscribe to Canon Hotep's channel. It's linked on my channel. Take you right there and you can subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to all the Hoteps, including the Hotep Nation. Go watch the Grifties. What leak from ESPN? Let me go look at this. What are you talking about? What is this leak? I did not hear about this. This is May 22, 2021. This is old news. What are you talking about, bro? Let's see. Let me try Google because DuckDuckGo is not the best sometimes. I think they're still using Bing algorithm. News. Yeah, I don't see anything new here. What's the leak you talking about, man? Hey, just finished your run. Shout out to Vic, man. Vic be getting it in with his marathon runs, boy. It's a 6 year. It's a 6 year also. Correct. Right. Yeah, that's what I meant by 6'6". That's the day you're closing on your house, so that's good for you, man. It's probably going to be a good day. That's your son's B-Day? Happy birthday to young man. He's got a powerful birthday. Oh, Project Veritas has some ESPN whistleblowers. What was they saying? I'll check that out later. Sounds like something interesting I might check out. Bop, 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 bop. I think I'm out to study my chess and get ready for Hotel Has Been Told You tonight. Make sure y'all tune in. We'll be back at 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight for Hotel Has Been Told You, our marquee show on this channel. Marshall Forward, have you ever read Storm of Steel by Ernst Younger? It's a great read, giving a visceral account of the trench warfare of World War I. No, I actually haven't. I don't think I've read that. I may have read parts of it. I can't recall, though. I've read so much that I remember one time somebody, I asked somebody, one of my elders, I asked him, I said, yo, what book can I read in regards to some subject matter, right? And he mentioned the book, and I went on Amazon. The book was like $500. And then I was like, why does this book look familiar? So I went to my library and looked, and I had the book, and it was highlighted and everything. And I was like, wait, I studied this book already. I had this information. The information I was looking for, I had it already and read it. And that's why I had the information in my head. I just forgot where I got it from. It's the problem with when you consume just too much content. You know, I done forgot more than people have ever learned. It just is what it is, man. AG, you gonna hop on that? Yeah, there you go. AG, get your grift on, man. It's gonna be a good one for the home team. Republican Trump supporter got fired on YouTube. I'll try to hook you tomorrow. Look for it. Okay. Again, appreciate y'all tuning in. My name is Hotep Jesus, and I'll see y'all tonight. Love y'all. Hotep and Bill.